that puts its finger on all the hot button issues of the last 12 months.
In terms of massive events of huge national importance, there couldn't have been a more significant year than this. You've had an aggression from China, you've had an economy which is in recession, you've had a worldwide pandemic which we're suffering from, and it'll be very interesting to know over the next several minutes what the mood in the nation is. Let's get started, Rajdeep, by showing our viewers the methodology that's been used by Karvi Insights, our pollster, for this Mood of the Nation poll. This is a national sample of 12,232 interviews. Unlike the last time in August 2020, this time round, it's a mix of face-to-face in-person interviews and CATI or telephonic interviews. So there is a substantial element of surveying over here. The survey was carried out between the 3rd to the 13th of January 2021. And this is across 194 assembly constituencies and 97 parliamentary constituencies across the country. It really gives you a sense of which way the political hawa is blowing in this country and what might happen if elections are held right now. So what we'll do right now is focus in the first part of this broadcast on what would people's perception be around the government's handling of the COVID pandemic, because that's the one issue, Rajdeep, that everyone's grappled with throughout the last year.
That's right. For the last almost 12 months now, India and the world have grappled with COVID-19. So we thought that we will start the Mood of the Nation by giving you a sense of how the nation is looking at the Prime Minister's handling of COVID-19. Take a look at these numbers. Prime Minister Modi's handling of COVID-19, the first data points from Karvi Research for India today. Outstanding, say 23%, that's about 1 in every 4. 73%,
no,
50% are saying good. So a total of 73% are rating the Prime Minister either as good or outstanding. Average is 18% and poor is 7%. Very poor is 2%. So if you add that, that's about 27% who are giving the Prime Minister a thumbs down, but 73%, a massive majority in that sense, are giving a thumbs up.
This is an incredible data indicator because it shows despite all the adversity that people have had to deal with, the voters, according to this Mood of the Nation opinion poll, are satisfied with how the Prime Minister and the government have dealt with COVID-19. You know, you can't be a bigger challenge, and if on this challenge, this is the level of approval, it's quite incredible.
That's right. And it's not just the Prime Minister himself. We've also compared him to global leaders across the world. And Rahul, you want to give us a sense of where the Prime Minister stands when it comes to global leaders and their handling of the COVID-19
So
pandemic.
I just want to first explain the data that you'll see on your screen. This is taken from the latest World Economic Forum release, which is based on Pew data. Pew is a research agency in the United States. So we've picked the data from the research agency, and then we'll show you what the MOTN data tells us about the Prime Minister's handling in a global context. So there are some countries like Canada, like Australia, like Germany, where the leaders have higher ratings than our Prime Minister does. But if you come into countries that you can really compare with India, which are roughly in the same socio-economic bracket, there the Prime Minister is leagues ahead. For example, in the United States, which you'd expect would do much better than India when it comes to dealing with a pandemic where healthcare facilities are better, only 47% of the people thought that the then President Donald Trump had done a good job. 52% thought he'd failed. In the UK, Boris Johnson has an approval rating of only 46% on his handling of the COVID pandemic. 54% think he's done a bad job. In Spain, again, 54% think the leader's done well. 47% think he's done badly. Emmanuel Macron in France has an approval rating of only 59%. 41% say he's doing badly. Now, given our healthcare facilities, the level of general awareness in dealing with a virus, you know, this is an incredible performance by the Prime Minister in this huge year where we're dealing with this pandemic.
You know, you look at Australia and Germany as the two countries where their leaders are rated even higher really than the Prime Minister. But if you look at, as Rahul pointed out, the US, the UK, Spain, France, countries that have struggled and are continuing to struggle with the pandemic, the Prime Minister has done much better. And maybe that's the first talking point to bring in our guests to get their first reactions to how they perceive the Prime Minister's rating of COVID-19. We are joined by Dr. Ajoy Kumar of the Congress Party, Nupur Sharma of the BJP, Dr. Naresh Trehan of Vedanta joins us, Dr. Sanjeev Bagai joins us, and I'm also joined by
Sonali Acharji.
Sonali Acharji.
She's with the India Today magazine, and she's been working on bringing this part of the survey together. So we'll have different members of our team at the India Today magazine joining us to help explain what they've been working on, and Sonali can talk about the COVID pandemic. I want to go across to Naresh Trehan first because, you know, the challenges are monumental. You can't have a more challenging year for any government than what we've dealt with over the last 12 months. And despite that, 73% people think that Prime Minister Modi has handled the COVID pandemic either outstandingly well or his performance has been good. What do you make of this?
Well, I think they're right on the button. This poll shows that, you know, if you want to compare our Prime Minister's performance with the rest of the world, the only comparable countries are the ones that have populations equal to us or at least near us. So the basic thing is when you talk about Australia, which has 25 million people, or some other, Germany, which has 50 million or whatever, the point is that to be so decisive and so early in the game is what saved India. This misery that the United States and UK have gone through. So the fact that they were threatening us at that time, they were staring us in the face. One, that the infrastructure to take care of people when they got sick was wanting, or hugely wanting. Second, we didn't have the technology or the protective equipment that we needed. Third was that there was a population which was sort of so mixed, it's got so many tiers to it, that how to actually make it happen, that you lock down, keep them in place. There was a little mishap with the labor that got caught in the middle of it. That was very tragic. But the rest of it worked very well. The fact those 3 months helped us to build the infrastructure, get the technology in place, and then be able to take care of our people, and then the continuous stressing on masking, distancing, and all that has all helped. So I think, in short, the Prime Minister did do an outstanding job by being so decisive so early in the game.
Also significantly, you know, the poll was done at a time when the vaccine was about to be launched, was done at a time when India's numbers are significantly down, particularly compared, let's say, to a United States and indeed to large parts of the world. So there is a slow feel-good factor that this poll seems to suggest when it even comes to handling of COVID-19. To that extent, Dr. Ajoy Kumar, do you accept that the opposition today would find it very difficult to target the Prime Minister on the handling of COVID-19?
I think you've hit it spot on. Couple of observations on these data points. One is that if you look at the health of state of Germany, and China is obviously out of this discussion, but South Korea, Taiwan, so how do they respond? And we don't have to look into exponentially and start predicting how great the response was. The Prime Minister is also the sum total of what the states have done. So when we slice the Prime Minister's performance, are we slicing the performance of Kerala, Maharashtra, Delhi, other states in India? Is also an important perspective to keep in mind, because much as we like to give the Prime Minister credit, as often as possible people do try to do that. I would also urge Rajdeep to also look at how the states have responded.
Okay, let me give that. You raised an important point, and maybe we need to give that point as well. How did state governments handle COVID-19? Take a look at the numbers in the mood of the nation. 20% are saying outstanding, 50% are saying good. State governments handling of COVID-19, 20% are rating it as outstanding, 50% good. So 70% are also giving a lot of credit to state governments. Remember, 73% good outstanding for the Prime Minister, 70% for the state. So state governments also coming out well. Average is 20%, poor is 7%, very poor is 2%. So it appears, and Ajoy Kumar seems to suggest, so don't give the credit only to Prime Minister Modi, also give it to chief ministers. You want to respond to that, Nupur Sharma, that this is being seen as a collective effort where both the states and the centre seem to have worked effectively?
Good evening, Rajdeep, Rahul, panelists, and to all viewers. Now, of course, given that all of us living today faced a pandemic of this magnitude for the first time, nobody actually knew what a pandemic actually entails and how it can affect economies and lives and everything related to it. However, I think I would agree with the Prime Minister that he was looking at cooperative federalism. But at the same time, I would also say that if the Prime Minister did not lead from the front, everybody was actually quite lost. I will obviously congratulate a few states who have handled the pandemic really well. Initially, you remember when the first few cases came along, how Kerala managed it really well, but thereon they lost the way somewhere. Delhi supposedly managed well, but thereon twice the central government had to intervene. Maharashtra has been a big question mark, I would say that. However, in totality, you have to understand that I do know there have been state governments who were adamant on hiding the number of infections, not only infections, but COVID deaths. They had a subcommittee and an overreaching committee from the government who decided whether a patient died of COVID or not, and not of doctors exactly. And you know exactly what happened. There have also been instances wherein you remember there was a lot of laborers trying to get to their home states, and how I can tell you, I have the official figures from the rail department, how roughly 1,500 trains or 1,300 trains were actually demanded by a state of Maharashtra, but some 283 actually went empty. So there have been problems. There have been some issues where politics was trying to be played, which was unfortunate. But overall, I would say, if you were to compare India to other countries, we have done really well with only 10.6 million infections in a 138 crore population. I think you compare it to any country, I think we've done remarkably well in controlling this.
You know, I want to come to a part of the study which really makes it that much more significant when it comes to you studying how people perceive the government's performance. And this part of the study deals with the impact that the COVID pandemic had on the economic status of people. So we asked them, did you suffer personally? Was there a decrease in your income? And 66% of the respondents, 2 in 3 people we spoke to, said their income had come down. 19% said they'd lost their job, which means about 85 people out of 100 had been impacted in some way dramatically. Either their income came down or they just lost their job. Only 12% said that there'd be no change, and 3% said their income had increased. Now, this is what makes this stunning. That you think that the government and the Prime Minister are doing a great job when you yourself are suffering immensely on the financial front, Rajdeep.
Because if you look at the next, very next graphic, Rahul, which is the centre's handling of the economic distress due to COVID. So people have admitted that their incomes have decreased. 2 in every 3 have admitted that. Lost jobs is 1 in every 5. That's about 85% have had income decrease or lost job. But ask them, centre's handling of COVID economic distress, outstanding 20%, good 47%, average 22%, poor 8%, very poor 2%. So the same people, it appears, who have suffered are also saying, no, the centre has done a reasonable job of handling the economy.
No, not reasonable. 67% think they've done well. Now, this is not Balakot, this is not the Ram Mandir or Jammu and Kashmir, where it's based on a narrative or it's based on perception. This is based on how you feel about a certain decision of the government, because it impacts you directly. Nothing that the government can or cannot do impacts a person more than having to deal with the virus, because each person is dealing with it. Whereas on Article 370, you're not dealing with it personally. Sanjeev Bagai, what do you make of the fact that about 85% of the people say either their income came down or they lost their job, and yet they think, given this adversity or despite the adversity, the government has done a good job?
Good evening, everyone. I think it's a recognition of what was done correctly. I'll break it up very quickly into 5 different components. I think this is a once-in-a-century pandemic which all of us have faced. I think the nation understood what we were dealing with. We, from a government point of view, state point of view, and the medical fraternity point of view, we appreciated what the government done was to navigate through the initial phase, because it was completely going into an unknown storm. aviate because the day-to-day situation was dynamic and changing. We negotiated the difficult paths, put lives ahead, followed by livelihood, and then looked at various other aspects. Communicate well with the country, and last was innovate. Now the communication was scientific based. There was less amount of misrepresentation. He relied on scientific facts, doctors, researchers, ICMR. We are dealing with a huge crisis of an ever-bulging population with limited infrastructure as far as healthcare is concerned. Yes, people lost their jobs, their pay cuts were there, and other aspects were there. But if you look at the end point, we have the lowest case fatality in terms of mortality in most parts of the Western world. If you look at a corrected number with, let's say, India versus US, with regards to population and the patient per 1,000 patient bed ratio, we have about 90 to 92% lesser case fatality than US.
But people have lost.
That's a remarkable achievement.
But people have lost their livelihoods.
All the states.
But let's be very clear. Income decreased 66%, lost jobs 19%. 4 in every 5, more than 4 in every 5 have in some way their livelihoods have been affected. You're now telling us that this poll seems to suggest that people are applauding the government for saving lives, are worried about livelihoods, and at the same time are not willing to suggest that the center mishandled.
No, but it's not just about saving.
It's not. You know, it seems I would like to know how. I still don't have a rational explanation for that, Rahul. I can understand people supporting the government for its handling of the pandemic, but when you've lost your livelihoods and still are saying the center's handling of the economic distress, 67% are saying good or outstanding. That's
so people aren't just thanking the government for saving their life. They actually believe that the government did a good job on handling the economic situation caused by the COVID disruption.
Even while having lost their livelihoods.
Despite having lost their livelihoods.
That's the question.
But that's the data that is coming out.
Sure.
And that baffles the imagination, because if you've just lost your job or your income's taken a hit, surely you don't like what's happening. But Ajay Kumar, that just shows the kind of credibility the Prime Minister has and the kind of challenges the opposition has to deal with this man who, despite everything, despite people losing their job or taking a hit on their salaries, voters believe that he's done a good job.
No, the question again is the way you look at data, Rahul. I mean, I think one is that the biggest danger in democracy is hagiography. The second danger is that you look at your state's data, why aren't you going hammer and tong saying what a great chief minister India has got? Because the same data, so what Ms. Sharma of BJP was saying, I find it very, you look at one data and say it is great, 70% approval, COVID reaction, Prime Minister, great guy. Then you look at the same 70% good and outstanding of state and say, oh, by the way, there's nothing to it. So you have to decide what data you want to look at. I'm amazed, honestly, Rahul, I'm amazed with the sheer lack of either the ability to analyze. Because here is the data which clearly says, so please go around saying all the state chief ministers did an outstanding job. Then I can understand the hagiography. But I can't understand when you say the state. So if you see the state data on the jobs also, and if all the states...
No, so Ajay Kumar does have a point, Nupur Sharma, and you have to give that to him, because 20 versus 23. 20% in the state think the government did an outstanding job, 23% of the center think the government did an outstanding job. And when it comes to good, it's 50 versus 50. So it's 70 versus 73 in total. 70% think the state governments did well, and 73% believe that the central government did well. Ajay Kumar uses that data to make the argument that you can't just say the PM's doing a great job. Even the state governments have been appreciated in the same data set.
No, but I don't understand what his point is, because a lot of states are also ruled by the BJP. My point simply is, I don't know what your questionnaire entailed. I don't know if this MOTN is actually on one CM space, or maybe perhaps mood of the nation on how Didi is doing, or how Uddhav Thackeray is doing, or somebody else is doing. Your MOTN, from what I understood, is perhaps on the Prime Minister.
It's gone across states. It's gone across states, whether BJP or non-BJP ruled states. The general sense one is getting that people are appreciating leadership. Whether it's at the center or at the state level, people are appreciating leadership in tough times.
But that's the question I actually answered in my last bit, when I said even the Prime Minister congratulated. In fact, if you remember, before lockdown, regulations before they were coming. There were 4 or 5 VCs that the Prime Minister held with the Chief Ministers. In fact, he urged them, because state by state there are different circumstances, there were different number of infections, and there were different rural-urban divide. And he asked them, how do you want to go about lifting lockdown restrictions? And you need to understand that of a pandemic and with a population of this large a scale, that kind of cooperative federalism was absolutely necessary. But I am going to actually come back to my point, and I
want you all to come and possibly from India Today, Sonali, who's there, can explain this to us. You know, what is baffling, as to use the word that Rahul used, is that an impact on economic status, 66% income decrease, lost job 19%, that's 85%, and yet people are rating the Prime Minister's performance or the centre's performance of handling the economic distress due to COVID. Remember, due to the lockdown, 20% outstanding, 47% good. That's still 67%. So it seems that even when you're losing your livelihood, you're still willing to give the benefit of the doubt to the government's handling of the crisis. Explain that to us.
Okay, so I had visited a few families in Chandni Chowk who had been affected by COVID and had been affected by the economic distress. They ran restaurants and they had to shut down. Some of them didn't get their workers back, and they were struggling to make ends meet, but they were also infected with COVID. And what one particular family told me really stands out, because they said the way in which the health authorities handheld them through this pandemic, the way in which rations were delivered, the way in which senior members were taken care of. You know, one of them had a father who was a cancer survivor and he survived COVID. They said that they have a lot of faith. What this government gives them is hope, that they believe that if they can save them from a virus where, you know, their family members could have died from it, and where it was so hopeless for them, they really thought their father would die, they can also eventually help them get over this economic crisis.
So what you're suggesting is that they put a primacy on the saving of lives even ahead of livelihoods. Because when I look at impact, and this is important, impact on economic status, and we break it down, because remember the images of migration, of people leaving their homes, those were images that stunned the nation. And if you look at income decrease, 69% workers say their income has decreased. 66% farmers say their income has decreased. 65% self-employed say their incomes have decreased. 65% businessmen say so, and 61% service sector. So across the board, there is clear evidence of economic distress. Job loss, 21% among workers, 17% among farmers, 19% among self-employed, 24% businessmen have perhaps had to shut down, and 19% service sector. So now there is economic distress, but people are giving the benefit of doubt.
But two things stand out in the data you just read out. One, that it's businessmen whose livelihoods have been most badly impacted because their businesses have had to shut down. 24% who declared themselves as businessmen in this data set said they've lost their jobs. They've had to shut down whatever
across
enterprise.
The board, Rahul, there is economic distress across the board.
But 24 is more than the others. For example, farmers have been least impacted at 17. But if you come on the other side, it's workers who had to take the biggest hit on salary. So it's workers who've been most impacted, and it's those who are in the service sector, holding steady jobs. They're the ones who say that their income is least impacted, relatively speaking.
So it appears that in March, April last year, the Prime Minister, or indeed the governments, took a conscious choice, both at the centre and stage, to put lives above livelihoods. We needed to save lives. We'll deal with livelihoods later. And the harshness of the lockdown was criticized by many. But clearly, in this mood of the nation, people are willing to give, as I said, the government the benefit of doubt. Putting lives over livelihoods, Dr. Trehan, was there a wise strategy in hindsight? Or do you believe that we could still pay a price for it?
Absolutely. There's no debate on that in my mind. First of all, this is a worldwide phenomenon. So you can't, if anybody you can blame the Chinese. You can't blame the government or anybody for it having happened. The magnitude of it, everybody appreciated. We were all scared. The frontline workers were on the job. Crores of healthline workers stood their ground, saved lives. There was a lot of decisive thinking going on at the Prime Minister's level, at the government level, and it was cooperative. All the committees had a good interaction between The private sector and the government sector is
No,
the
what
healthcare
happens to
space.
the loss
How
of
to move forward.
livelihoods? No, Dr.
No,
Trehan,
just-
the
let me get-
the United States appeared under Trump to put livelihoods above lives. They wanted to, Trump was
So
credited with getting the economy on track, but America was in a shambles when it came to the healthcare sector.
Rajdeep,
India, the reverse seems to have happened.
No, Rajdeep, you're debating this, and that I'm coming to that debate itself. That people have suffered hugely, no question about that. But in spite of that, the reason why they're not blaming the government for it is because it was not government made. It is not any bad decision by the government that wreaked havoc. Yes, as I said, there was a mishap for the laborers who got caught in the middle of it. That was terrible. But it also shows you how civil society came together with the government to give them as much succor as they could. So the basic thing is the nation really performed well. It's not only the government was the direction, it was I said the Prime Minister is to be complimented for his decisive thinking. That we did the lockdown and we did not worry about how we'll take care of it because it saved millions and millions of lives. If millions and millions of lives got lost in the middle of it, any amount of economic recovery would not have helped. Now we have the chance that people have lost their jobs. They have done, I mean, you can't imagine the misery it has wreaked on people. We must all understand that and actually try to bring it all back.
That's interesting, Dr. Trehan, but let's look at the next data point, the impact of that lockdown, which was so criticized by the opposition in particular. What impact did it have? 39% say it contained the spread. When it comes to the question of contained the spread but caused problems, say 28%. Not effective, say 13%. Damaged the economy, say 10%. Contained the spread but damaged the economy, say 7%. So what you are seeing, and Dr. Ajoy Kumar, you really need to answer this because there is a sense that the opposition, the Congress in particular, believe that the lockdown itself was a bad idea in terms of its harshness. It was seen as draconian. At 96 hours notice, the country was being shut down. People seem again to be suggesting at least it contained the COVID spread.
Look, you had a lockdown, whether the lockdown definitely contained the COVID spread is a given. We were not objecting to the lockdown being implemented. I think the way we prepared for it, and that's why it led to miseries like Dr. Trehan correctly said, and everybody rightly said, and I don't think it's a Congress-BJP issue. It's an issue whether the migrant people suffered, whether everybody else suffered, whether it was, whether could we have been announced it with a greater period, because whatever the date in which it was set is okay. We have no issues on that, and I think it definitely helped and the lockdown was the only tool we had in our quiver. In terms of in our arsenal, the only tool we had at that time was lockdown. Across the world, the epidemiologists, the physicians, all the people were grappling with this issue. The issue was, did anybody else in the world do it this way? I don't think so. Whether they announced it in a phased manner, they announced it and were better prepared for it. And
no,
even if you look at the...
But can I make a counterpoint, Rajdeep? My point is this, it comes...
Rahul, I'll just finish off.
Go on.
Rahul, I'll just finish off with 5 seconds. So I'm just saying that if you're looking at it, if I remember the number you said is 39%, and so that leaves us 61% who don't seem to be very excited about it, and saying that it's either not, it was not done well, or it was, so it's 61 versus 39%. That's what if I remember the numbers you've just read out, Rajdeep. So, hey, 39%, is it a pass mark? I mean, when I gave the 12th standard exam, 40%.
Sir, the fact is a majority have believed it contained the COVID spread, and therefore I come back to it. People seem to have put lives over livelihoods. That's the reality.
No, but can I give a counter, Rajdeep?
Yes.
It comes down to belief. People have the highest level of belief in what the Prime Minister is doing, his intention, his actions, Nupur Sharma, whether somebody likes it or not.
Also, I think, as we are seeing across the world, in times of pandemics, leaders, people's faith in leadership actually increases.
Not necessarily. Boris Johnson, Bolsonaro,
Trump and Bolsonaro are the three outliers there. These are the three leaders who have seen to have failed. Across the world, people like the idea of strong leaders. Otherwise.
I want to...
Yeah, go on.
Yes, please. I want to actually go back to the question before the break we took. Well, you need to understand when you're talking about losses of jobs and yet people voting in favor of the Prime Minister, you need to understand that in a country as large as ours, almost 84 crore people were fed under the Garib Kalyan Yojana. And I don't know how many countries were doing social service of this magnitude that they were delivering 25 kilos of ration, pulses, wheat, and rice to families. And that's a fact. People were not going to sleep on an empty stomach. And secondly, you know, I remember from last year, by September, our factory output was at an 8-year high. By October, our sales of two-wheelers and cars were at a 2-year high. And at the same time, service sector, private service sector jobs were as good or as big as pre-COVID times. So what I'm trying to say is that the economy certainly picked up. IMF has given us 8.8%
throwing up mixed numbers,
growth.
but we'll get into the economy separately. It's not quite as rosy as Nupur is projecting, but the fact is
but that's with every other country.
Sure.
Which country has not seen
I'm not arguing
a
that.
bad economy?
Sure, I'm not arguing with that, but I'm just saying that it's a fact that people have a level of faith that I haven't seen, that I didn't believe was possible. They just have faith that this man, for us, is doing the right thing. That's the Fevicol ka faith.
It's almost Teflon-like when you look at it. But clearly, and this is the first big takeaway from the survey, when it comes to COVID-19, by and large, it's a thumbs up for Prime Minister Modi, the centre, and indeed state governments as well. Leadership has been applauded by and large in these tough times.
So are people in India willing to take the vaccine? How excited and enthusiastic are citizens about getting inoculated? How many are naysayers? How many are vaccine hesitant? Find out when we come back in the first national trend line on that one question that has engaged us so often. Are you willing to take the COVID vaccine? Find out what the response since every 6 months, this big mega trend line explaining to voters what the mood in the country is. At this moment, we want to take that one question that's engaged people so much over the last several weeks. It's animated our newsroom. There have been debates with friends, with colleagues. There have been debates at home. There have been debates on WhatsApp group. WhatsApp groups are dangerous places to be on, but hey, here it is for what it's worth. Are you willing to take the COVID vaccine? When we asked this question to 12,000 plus people in the India Today Mood of the Nation poll, 76% of the respondents said yes. If you were to do a global comparison, this is amongst the highest rates of vaccine acceptance anywhere. In most countries, Rajdeep, the number of people wanting to take vaccines is relatively low. And it seems that in India, Dr. Trehan, there's a high level of vaccine acceptance. People, 3/4 the people who we spoke to say yes, when they get a chance, they'll go out and they'll get that shot.
Well, that's logical. People have suffered through this whole year in fear that if they get it, they don't know how severe it will be, who they will give it to, whether their parents will survive or not. All that stuff is going around, and then you see a light at the end of the tunnel. And now, are you willing to embrace that, or you're going to have doubts? So what has happened, unfortunately, there was a very unsavvy controversy created politically. Now, politics should stay out of life. This is life-saving thing. You know that the vaccines around the world have been put through the paces of safety, efficacy. Why would anybody oppose it?
No, so why are the numbers then low? Then why are the numbers among health workers? You see, our survey shows, remember, our survey doesn't include just health workers. It includes all Indians with a high acceptability of the vaccine. Why is it that in this first week, health workers don't seem to be embracing it with the same enthusiasm?
Rajdeep, if you have us on your program, you might as well listen to us.
Yes, listen.
Don't interrupt like this.
Go ahead.
I'm trying to tell you that these controversies have thrown up some doubts. Social media picks it up and enlarges it much larger than life. So people who feel that they are not that vulnerable, even in our healthcare workers. Now, I'll give you a very important statistics which does not exist anywhere. We at Medanta decided that we are going to do an extensive day-by-day study on people who are working with us, who will get the vaccine, how we'll follow them, So first we have done their blood samples for whether they have antibodies or not. And you'll be surprised. 45% of our healthcare workers at Medanta have already developed antibodies. So, and we are still, like I took the first shot, all our colleagues have taken the shot. There have been no complications. Maximum was a little stiffness or a little fever for a day for people. But you understand that unless we do these kind of studies, people will not have the confidence. So
I take your point, but Medanta, sir, is not India. I'm sorry to say
No, but there is a counter.
Medanta is not India. There are parts of the country. Look at even Mumbai. Look at the level. It could be the bureaucracy. It could be the manner in which this is being implemented through the municipal centers.
Rajdeep, the problem is you don't listen.
No, I'm not. I'm listening to you. You're giving me one side of the story.
No, you have to listen to the next step. So what I'm saying is that it necessitates us. It's a very encouraging data. It necessitates us to do as much sero survey as we can, because if you remember, Delhi did a sero survey and it came up to 29% 3-4 months ago. It is possible that with the people who had overtly never got infected, did get infected, developed antibodies, and we are moving towards herd immunity. It's a great hope for India.
No, but Dr.
That's
Bagai,
the importance of it.
Dr. Bagai, the data intelligence unit of the India Today Group ran some analytics which say that of the 14,119 sessions which we targeted, where there were 100 doses per session, 44.3% of the health workers showed up. That's less than half, which essentially means nationwide, I'm not talking about one particular private hospital, but nationwide, of all the people who could have signed up, only 44.3% health workers have come. The rest of them, for whatever reason, have decided they want to wait their turn. They don't want to come right now. How does that compare with the 76% in our poll who say they want the vaccine?
When you talk of a vaccine program, right, when you're looking at a vaccine program which is pan-India at such a large scale, you will have week-to-week ups and downs and month-to-month ups and downs of public perception and on-ground reality as acceptance. I think what we need is a 76% pan-India survey which you have shown is a phenomenal acceptance. 3 days back, John Hopkins has published data in which it's showing 56 to 64% US acceptance. So I think what we need to do is to put correct scientific information in the public domain. I think the politicians should stay well out of it and not create any further mess as far as the vaccine scientific process is concerned. The scientific process is actually depicted by the large group of doctors who are getting it done. The pan-India public awareness campaign needs to be continued to be run so that people know that this is the most important public health intervention to save lives. You will have local reactions. What is important to distinguish between local reaction and adverse reaction is very important. People are mistaking all small fevers, stiffness of arms to be an adverse reaction. That it is not. An adverse reaction is completely different. And I think we've had no significant adverse reactions so far.
No, but that's important. That's an important point.
Of this.
Of the 7.86 lakh people who were tracked, there were hospitalizations in only 10 cases. That is 0.001 of the total vaccines.
That's less than 0.001%.
Sure, and I think at the end of the day, part of the problem has been in certain states bureaucracy. The method has not been decentralized effectively enough. Municipal centers have not worked effectively enough. You're seeing variations. Some states are registering 80-90% and higher. Other states are 20% and less. So you've got wide variation within India. I'm just trying to understand again. Sonali, you're tackling this in a way as a journalist. Are you seeing greater acceptance week on week as awareness spreads?
So I had gone for the dry run initially in Daryaganj, the health center there, and there was a group of Anganwadi workers who had come, and they were shaking just to take the dry run vaccine. It wasn't even the real vaccine. They were that scared. And I remember talking to them and they said, no, we're scared. We wanted to do it because we want an end to it. And we realized that the government is giving it to us for free and we're the first people to get it. So we realized that it's been done for us. But they were terrified of it after the Bharat Biotech vaccine was approved because there was of news about it. There was so much of rumor mongering. So they were scared. And I've been in touch with them. And eventually somebody came to them and actually explained to them that, you're not going to fall sick. You're not going to die. The safety has been looked at. No government is going to risk having an unsafe vaccine out there. And quite a few of them went back and took the vaccine. So I think it's just a matter of explaining and building that trust.
It's interesting that you're saying, of course, the fact that it's a free vaccine. One of the questions asked, do you want a free vaccine? Yes, say 92%, no, say 7%. I am presuming, therefore, Nupur Sharma, that since your government committed during the Bihar elections, at least for a free vaccine, other state governments have committed, eventually, will the vaccine be free for all or not?
Well, Rajdeep, that's a question to answer for each state, because I'm sure these are subsidized vaccines, then part of the cost would be taken over by the government at the center. But the other part, because considering that health is also a state subject, will be borne by the states, like in the case of Bihar. However, I want to come back to this vaccine hesitancy issue. Rajdeep, there are two things. One is, since you brought up the issue of municipal local administrative bodies, not doing the run properly, the journalist right behind me, the lady actually gave it out to you. There were dry runs and there was feedback also taken.
Yes, so but it was seen to have been done in a hurry, ma'am, without necessary awareness.
Allow me to complete. Allow me to complete. Please allow me to complete. You have two very senior doctors, and Dr. Trayan happens to be one of the first people to have got the vaccine. Dr. Guleria himself was the first person to get the vaccine at AIIMS, and he got the Covaxin vaccine. So please allow me to complete. Please, please. Now the issue simply is, when you have opposition parties making public statements to the effect of, "Arey, BJP ki vaccine hai," as if Oxford University researchers came along with us at the headquarters at 6A DDU Marg and we ghotod a vaccine in our headquarters. I mean, come on, illogical. And is MLC going on to say impotency ho jayegi? If this is not minority appeasement and somehow some communal colored politics, what it is? I mean, that's my basic question.
Okay.
They need to stop. And I agree with the gentlemen, the doctors. Politicization of such an important issue needs to stop. We have succeeded with polio vaccination. We will succeed with this too.
I want to take other questions. Were you infected by the COVID-19 vaccine? 92% said no, 7% said yes. On a random sample of 12,200 odd people, 7% of the respondents said they'd been infected by COVID, 92% said no. When they were asked the question, has anybody in your family died because of COVID, 25% are saying yes. It's a bigger number because that other question is just personalized about you. This is about your whole family. 25% here saying yes, 73% saying no. Now this is important. The question is about where did you go for treatment? Only 24% went to private hospitals. 61% of the respondents in our poll went to a government hospital, and 12% didn't have any hospital at all, or they just stayed home and they got fixed while they were staying at home.
But the last question is interesting. Satisfied with treatment at hospitals, 76% said yes, 22% said no. And I think that is important, because at a time when our public healthcare system has come under severe strain, for 3 in every 4 people to say they were satisfied with the treatment is also a huge thumbs up to our doctors and our medical care system. Our healthcare system has stood up in the toughest of times. So we've had in the first segment leaders being given the thumbs up, Rahul, but we're also seeing doctors, particularly government hospitals. Remember, 61% have gone to government hospitals, and out of that, 76% are saying yes, we are satisfied. So for all the strain, the difficulties, and they've gone through enormous difficulty, a large number of people are satisfied. That's the good news.
Appreciate every person who's a doctor, medical staff, an attendant, whatever role they've played. It's because of the effort they made that we've been able to deal with the pandemic in the way that we have. And it also shows the strengths of some of our systems, not just Rajdeep, the government, the center and the state, but also the healthcare sector coming together. And I know people, your own son is, in the healthcare sector.
But they need to get better. They need to get better. Let's be clear. I think one of the things we learned at the start of the pandemic, not enough ventilators, there was a question over beds. We got our act together. So I think a crisis brings us together. Next time we'll be better prepared, hopefully.
Hopefully there won't be another.
Whenever there's a crisis, we'll be even better prepared.
Another pandemic. Let's just get over with this one. We'll have more for you on the 40th edition of the Mood of the Nation opinion poll coming up on the other side of a very quick break.
When we come back, the big question. What happens if elections are held today? How are all these numbers of dealing with the pandemic impacting elections? That's the big question when we return. Hello and welcome once again to the India Today Mood of the Nation survey, brought to you by Carvey. All the data, of course, in India Today magazine. Remember, this is a survey that's continued for 2 decades, a biannual survey every January and August, where we give you a sense of what the country thinks on the hot button issues of the day.
And over the last 20 years, India Today's Mood of the Nation has built a formidable reputation as India's foremost barometer to get a sense of which way the winds are blowing and what would happen if elections are held today. And over the next 1 hour, that's the question we hope to answer.
That's right. We'll have several special guests joining us on the show. We've got Raj Chengappa, the editorial director of India Today magazine. He's with us. We're also joined by Rahul Verma, political analyst with the Center for Policy Research. We're joined by Dr. Sandeep Shastri, leading political analyst, and joined by Gaurav Ballabh of the Congress and Nalin Kohli of the BJP. So we'll get various views, and Dr. Sanjay Kumar also is joining us from the CSDS. Okay, let's then go and find out all the big questions, the answers to the big questions, including who would be winning an election if it was held today, a general election. We are in 2021, but that's what the biannual survey does, gives you a sense of where we stand today. Let's start, Rahul, by looking at vote share if polls were held today. And these are the numbers that stand out. 43% to the NDA. The ruling NDA gets 43%. The UPA gets 27%. Others get 30%. And if you look at that in comparison to what our poll said in August, the MOTN, the Mood of the Nation, had the NDA at 42%. So there's a 1% climb up for the NDA. The UPA is where it is, 27%. Others, 31%, are now down to 30%. So if you look at the worm as it is looking at, the NDA is more or less rock solid. Lok Sabha 2019, 45%, now 43%, just a marginal dip. And the UPA is exactly where it was almost 2 years ago during the Lok Sabha elections.
Quite incredible, Rajdeep, because you can't have a year where a country faces more adversity and shocks than this. You've had the pandemic, you've had the economic recession, you've had Chinese aggression, and despite all of that, over the last 5 months, they've been able to increase their overall vote share by 1%. Rachingappa, quick initial word from you. You'd imagine that in the midst of so much adversity, any government, no matter who's running it, its popularity is likely to take a hit. Your poll by Carvey for India Today suggests that that's not the case. They're holding firm.
And I think that's quite remarkable, Rahul. Look at what happened to President Trump, now ex-President Trump. He did badly with the pandemic. He was voted out of power. I mean, we haven't seen a sitting US president voted out of power for the last 30 years, I think. Whereas when it comes to Prime Minister Modi and the BJP, they not only consolidate in the raging pandemic. If you recall, in January 2019, their ratings were down. They, in fact, had dropped below the majority, the BJP itself. And they pick up in the midst of the raging pandemic in August 2020. And now in January 2021, you have them in, a slight dip, but holding, which is, as you said, these three major crises the country faces. What does it indicate? It indicates that they have faith in the government to deliver on these issues. They believe Mr. Modi is the best bet at the moment. And therefore, you're seeing the numbers that's there. And just as a counter, I think the opposition, if it is just held, is really a bad show for them. Because here they had great opportunity.
They couldn't have had a bigger opportunity.
Yeah. And they have, I think, squandered it.
Let's come to what would these votes translate into when it comes into seats. So if elections were held today, and I'll first deal with the NDA-UPA alliance, and then we'll come to a party-wise breakup. But Carvey Insights tells India Today that if elections were held today, and this is the first time you're seeing it on your screen right now, the NDA alliance would get 321 seats. That's 21 seats down from the Lok Sabha elections of 2019 when they picked up 353 seats. But even then, it's a remarkable performance given the fact that you can't, from a governance perspective, have a tougher year than this. The UPA is likely to bag 93 seats. That's exactly the number of seats they got in 2019. And others taken together might end up at 129. If I were to look at a trend line, starting from the Lok Sabha elections of May 2019 to now, The NDA from 353 went to 357 in our first MOTN, after that to 303, then 316, and now settling at 321. It's always been above 300. January 2020 was the low point, but 320, Rajdeep, in the middle of all the adversity that we're dealing with, is remarkable.
And also remember that the 353 was when the Shiv Sena was part of the NDA and indeed the Akalis. So what you could say somewhere is that the NDA is holding its own and the opposition is simply not lifting, it's not taking off. You know, it's stuck where it is, and there is no evidence here of anti-incumbency. That's very clear, that the gap between the government and the opposition remains as wide as ever. That's the first really big takeaway that you can give from these numbers. And this is almost now 2 years. So almost halfway, some would say, just approaching the 2-year mark of Mr. Modi 2.0. That's interesting. And if you look at these numbers, it remains steady. I think that's the, that's what gives you the analysis that this government has been able to retain its vote share.
This is
and
great
that's
news
very, very important.
From the government's perspective, but Gaurav Vallabh, from the opposition's perspective, if this were a cricketing analogy, this is where the pitch, the weather condition, the team, everything is in your favor. If despite that you can't go out and score runs against the opposition bowlers, then when will you?
Rahul, I'm not making any question on the survey because every survey have its own biases and every survey have its strengths and weaknesses. But I had a very typical question and which I want the answer. Post 2019 means after 2019 Lok Sabha election, there were elections in 5 states. That is Haryana, Jharkhand, Bihar, Maharashtra and Delhi. I am asking you a simple question. In any of these 5 states, in all these 5 states except one, the Congress, I am talking only about Congress, the performance got improved. And in all 5 states, the BJP's performance deteriorated if you talk about number of seats or about the percentage. Talking about the pandemic, Rahul, I am statistically asking a question. Name any country in Southeast Asia whose fatality rate due to COVID is higher than ours. Name any country in Southeast Asia or in the entire world whose Q1 GDP declined by minus 23.9%. Name any country in the world whose per capita income reduced by minus 5.5%. Name any country in the world who had still not recovered because of corona. And last but not least, can you give me any parameter of governance, whether social, whether economic, whether political, any parameter of governance where the ranking of the country got improved? I'm asking a very simple question. Get me the answer. I'm not denying
You've made a very important observation, especially when it comes to state versus center. And we'll also come to our political analysts in a moment. But respond to that, Nalin Kohli, because while you can take satisfaction in these numbers, the truth is that in polls held since 2019 in states, on an average, the BJP's vote has declined. NDA's vote
But Rajdeep, that's an academic point. Once again, who formed the government in Bihar? Who formed the government in Haryana? Okay, so the winning batsman didn't score as many runs as he scored the last time, but you still lost the match.
Rahul, there is a decline of about, on an average, 1 minute, sir. There is a decline on an average of about 13.5% in the NDA's vote share between centre and state.
It's of academic interest, Rajdeep.
No, the point he's trying to make, and I think which Nalin needs to respond to, our poll shows the popularity for NDA at the centre remains as high as it was in 2019. It is in state election, and we are entering an important state election year, is where there is a distinction between centre and state. Is that something that the BJP factors in? That the popularity of Mr. Modi and the BJP at the centre is much higher than your popularity at the state level. That's I think what Gaurav Vallabh was trying to raise, and he also gave indicators which he suggests would reveal the fact that the government's performance is not as high as our mood of the nation suggests.
I have several things to say, so I'd just like to finish them one by one. I'll come to this part last. The first is with regards to the mood of the nation. I think your statistics make it very clear that the NDA, and particularly which is led by the BJP, and we bank a lot on Prime Minister Narendra Modi's popularity and the work of his government, reached a high point in 19, better than 14, then showed a dip downwards, which the lowest point is 2020, January. And then, in the pandemic, notwithstanding anything and everything that the opposition wishes to say, has seen an upward climb. That too, a depleted NDA, which means that the BJP as a political party is on the right track in terms of what people, and elections are won when people who are voters are convinced and put their fingers on the button. It doesn't happen by any discussion or any argument elsewhere. That's the first point. So there is something good happening in the government's performance and in the leadership of Prime Minister Modi. That's a clear message. Now, people can find fault with that. People can find nuances to it. That's the blunt point. That the BJP has handled the pandemic well, and people are convinced that this government was on the right track, given its agenda and the crisis. Second, with regards to the state election, I think Rahul has made an important point, and I thank him because that would have been my logical answer. Winning the match or being happy about brownie points that I scored better but lost the match is an attitude that we have no complaint about the Congress party. In fact, as far as we are concerned, we would like them to continue on this path. Keep patting their backs that we have a good solid thing, because they probably need to understand that elections are won when you reach out to the people, and the people, the voters, are convinced about you. The difference between a mainstream political approach and what, if you will permit me to call, a fringe political approach, is that the mainstream political approach is focused on issues and is focused on solutions and is focused on agenda of performance.
Okay,
let me finish. One with Mr. Sardesai. There's been a lot of attacks made.
Sir, out of the 5 states, you have lost 3. I just want to put it out of the 5 states, you have lost 3 since 2019.
Yes, of course we've lost it. These are facts. I mean, how can you dispute a fact? I'm not here to dispute facts.
Okay.
I mean, how can a fact be disputed? I mean, but let me finish my point. I said between a fringe political approach and a mainstream political approach is that the mainstream political approach focuses on issues, on performance, and a positive agenda for change. A fringe approach plays to the gallery. They have nothing to do with the ground. Now, as far as I make a comparison, yes, the Congress party is entitled, as every Indian citizen, to have a point of view and put out as many questions they want. The problem is the Congress party never has answers. You can point out several questions asked. Congress can do its question answering. We are answerable to the people of India. And I think we repose our faith in what they decide.
Gaurav Ballab, respond. The fact is that the pitch was ideal in a way for the opposition. You've had the Chinese aggression, you've had a pandemic, you've had an economy in recession. Now, if in such times also the opposition is unable to lift itself, there's clearly something seriously wrong. You can go on targeting the Modi government for what you believe are its failures. But the public, as per the mood of the nation, is not willing to accept the opposition as a viable alternative. That's the problem.
Okay. Rajdeep ji, the point raised by Rahul ji and Nalin ji, that this is of academic interest. Rahul ji, is it an academic interest when you lost the power in Jharkhand? Who was having the government before 2020 January in Jharkhand? Who was having government in Maharashtra? So, out of 5
somebody who's
BJP lost.
No, one second, Rajdeep, let me respond to Rajdeep.
The mood of the nation is giving the BJP 320 and you are at 97.
No, one second. If this is some other Congress spokesperson, I would still understand the lack of facility with data. But for a professor at XLRI, who's taught finance, the inability to comprehend what this data is about is baffling. We are dealing with the mood of the nation. What would happen if elections are held now? You are telling us what happened in past elections. There's nothing to do with our data.
No, Rahul ji. I am just trying to say mood of the nation because we are discussing and comparing last 1.5 years data, Rahul ji. So you were saying it is of academic interest, sir. It is not of academic interest. BJP had lost the government in Jharkhand. They had lost the government in Maharashtra. In Haryana and Bihar, they had marginally managed the government. Anyhow, Now coming to the point which Rajdeep ji had raised. Rajdeep had raised a point that what about governance, and I had raised
No, my point is you're not lifting. My point is the opposition, our survey is showing that the gap between the government and the opposition remains identical to what it was in 2019 May. That's the point.
Rajdeep, I don't want to question on survey because I don't know how many data points,
12,000. Our
structure.
Size, so we have interviewed more than 12,000 people across 97 parliamentary constituencies.
So Rajdeep, do you think that a country of 135 plus crore, is this a representative sample size? I don't want to enter because that is a more a research methodology question which I don't want to enter, although I can raise 100 questions on that. I had a very simple point. What is the mood of the farmers? Can't we see the mood of the farmers? First of all, it was told it is only Punjab, Haryana farmers. See what happened yesterday in Karnataka. Then it was told what is the mood of the young people? 9.2% is the unemployment rate. So I'm always saying we lost because of pandemic. I am asking why the other countries of the world are not having that impact on our economy as we are having after the COVID.
Okay.
The problem, the answer is that before COVID itself, we were in recession. I had asked a simple question, again repeating. Can Ms. Nalinji let me know any one governance parameter? I am repeating, any one governance parameter on which government ranking got improved internationally or with respect to the last year. Any choice. Choice is yours. Give me any one parameter. Education, health, social security, economy, GDP, per capita income, atrocities, crime against women. Tell me any one parameter.
Okay.
That is what I want to
I want to move the needle also. Nalin will respond to this, but I also want to take our viewers through all the data that we've taken so much effort to bring. One second. Others will get.
In 2 sentences.
Okay, go on.
I won't
Respond
take
in
more
2
than that.
Okay, 2 sentences. Nalin.
You know, you use the word baffling. I'm going to use the word hilarious. I mean, here is Mr. Govt Passed, or Professor as he is, pointing out the so-called failures, and then your mood of the nation shows that they are exactly where they are.
So are we to draw the corollary that they are completely politically incompetent? I mean, I don't know what to say.
Okay, let's get the 3 political scientists to give us a sense of their first takeaway on this. Why don't you go one by one? Rahul Verma, you start first. Give us a sense, explain to our viewers, is this clear evidence of there is no opposition, there is no alternative to Mr. Modi, or is this a positive vindication, affirmation of the leadership of the NDA?
Thank you, Rajdeep, and thank you, everyone. So let me start making a comment on, I think the 12,000 sample size, if it has been done following all procedures, is a good enough sample. Professor Vallabh can keep raising questions, but this is a good enough number to make any sort of national level projections. Second point, I think what Rahul very well put, which is in the cricketing analogy, right? Like everything, and Govindji is correct about this, that there is sort of like, you know, external aggression and health crisis and economic crisis. Despite everything, what it seems like that nationally the citizens of India do not think opposition, the current opposition, as the alternative. And it can also be seen in terms of like what farmers protest and other things we are talking about. These are all non-party protests in that sense. In some ways, the opposition seems to be missing on the street, mobilizing people's grievances if there are. So this is a big question mark on the opposition. They cannot run away from it. The third point, which I want to sort of share, it is correct that what we are witnessing, a divergence between how people are voting in state elections and how people are voting in central election. And perhaps you can take back to the cricketing analogy, right? Some batsmen do well in tests and some batsmen do well in one day or T20.
After a big India victory, everybody's Harsha Bhogle.
Okay, let's get the next 2. Dr. Shastri, your first reactions. A quick short comment.
My quick reaction to this is both Shri Ballabh and Shri Nalin Kohli are right. The only thing is they are looking at it from different perspectives. I think our mood of the nation clearly shows that the citizens seem to have faith in the way the government has handled the situation. This does not mean that the government has necessarily handled the situation very well. It shows an element of resilience in the Indian citizen, that he or she thinks that the way the government has handled the crisis has been the best it can be done. It is also a reflection of the hopeless inability of the forces ranged against the government to be able to get their act together. Rahul made an important point that the agitation against the government does not see the opposition parties there, but sees more of citizen groups who are involved in it. So I think in some senses, the point that the Congress spokesperson made about challenges the country is facing is right, but that does not necessarily imply that the citizen does not rest his or her faith in the government, and that faith in the government is a byproduct of the political environment you have, where the citizen sees no other option at the present point of time. And finally, very clearly, I think we need to distinguish between state verdicts and central verdict. The mood of the nation is a reflection of citizen perspective on the central government and its leadership there.
And we have a separate poll for the state elections. We'll call Professor Vallabh for that. He understands data well. We'll have a poll out very soon for all the states where elections are being held.
Professor
Sanjay Kumar.
I would agree to all what Rahul Verma has said and what Professor Sandeep Shastri has said. I would only take the discussion a little forward. What is happening during last couple of years, or maybe a little more than that, that people's opinion on some of the issues, they may be critical about the government's performance. They have not been very critical about government performance on the pandemic. But even if they are not happy with the government's performance, that is not immediately translating into the party or the leader which they want to vote for. I would give you an example that even before 2019 Lok Sabha elections, through the surveys which were coming out, which we had done, we got a clear sense that people were not very happy with the economic performance of the government on the economic front. There was rural distress and people were raising questions about that. But when it came to voting, the same set of voters, when we asked the questions about voting, they still said they are going to vote for BJP and in the name of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. So what is happening, the causal relationship which we are trying to look at, that if people are unhappy with the performance of the government on any account, they are likely to not to vote for BJP. That's not happening. And that's not happening. That's the failure of the opposition.
Okay.
Because they see that there is no leadership. Because the opposition is not giving any confidence among the voters of this country.
In a way, the 2019 elections, Rahul, were also seen about leadership. Leadership was foregrounded, especially after Pulwama and Balakot. And look at leadership now. Give us, if you look at Prime Minister Modi's performance, which is an important barometer in any such poll, people have been asked the question, how do you rate Prime Minister Modi's performance? And I think that comes to the point that many of our analysts are making, and Raj made. Outstanding 30%, good 44%. So add the two, 74% are saying outstanding and good, average 17, poor 6. The sense I get from here, this is that despite all these challenges, the PM's leadership is still being trusted. So Moditva, if I may use the word, still seems alive and well and kicking. And I think that perhaps explains the difference, Rahul, between when you look at central elections and state elections. This is the mood of the nation. And the nation is showing that the Prime Minister's performance is rated very highly, Raj, which is why you've got Prime Minister Modi, I think, on the cover of the magazine.
Absolutely. And I think we shouldn't discount his leadership by saying that the opposition didn't provide enough, ammunition to knock him down. The fact is that right through this entire crisis, both whether the health crisis, the economic crisis, and now the Chinese crisis, as well as the farmers' crisis, he showed, this is an uncertain world. The pandemic brought that. He assured the people, and if you talk to management experts, they talk of this principle of bringing certainty to uncertainty. He has this ability of, saying, I have answers to the problem.
Is it about astute communication? Because according to the Congress, the governance record is questionable, but it's much more about your communication skills.
Both. Take a look at the lockdown. world leaders would have hesitated to do the kind of drastic lockdown that Mr. Modi does. He works on information that says that unless we are able to build a health capability, the pandemic will get out of hand and it would overwhelm us. So he takes this bold decision. Many criticize for what it is, but he's leading from the front. Then comes communication. What does he do? Again, if you talk to management experts, communication is a skill where you touch at the core emotion of a person. And therefore, when many people mocked at the Thali banging stuff. But what it did was, if I banged the Thali also, it touched a core. You're addressing fear.
But this is very unfair, Rajdeep, to say that it's only communication.
No, I'm asking,
whether
it is, what explains the Prime Minister's consistent high rating? Is it the strongman muscular leadership that he provides? Is it his communication skills?
Both. You see, leadership is a combination. It is never one single aspect. And leadership is, in times, especially in these times, where there are no known solutions, nobody knows how to handle the pandemic. He goes ahead and makes a decision, right? Then the other aspect of leadership is flexibility. When he finds there's economic distress, he says, all right, the Jan versus Jahan, this thing, let us bring back economy. So he's fine-tuning, and people are watching that. They know that there are no answers. Trump doesn't have an answer. Europe doesn't have an answer. You have to feel your way through. And then he communicates. Take a look at the way he says, after this, do gas duri. He's talking to the people. He says, wear your mask.
Can I make the point, and I want Sandeep Shastri to respond to it, that does it go much further than just emotion or communication? People are actually feeling the governance. This pandemic has impacted their life, and despite their salaries coming down, 19% said they lost their jobs, 66% said their salaries had taken a hit. If they like the work of the Prime Minister, 74% saying it's at least been good, if not outstanding, that shows they're relating to the work. You can't say it's messaging, because if it's messaging, then ऐसा लग रहा है कि बुद्धू बना रहे लोगों का, बुद्धू नहीं बन रहा है.
And if I before you come in, Dr. Shastri, just look at what we are saying. Just a minute, from August 2018 at 55%, it's up to 74%. So actually, the Prime Minister's rating today is a little higher than it was even in August 2019. This was just 3 months after his big victory in the Lok Sabha. So somewhere, is it Dr. Shastri, that a crisis in a way gets people to, in a way, reach out to those who show risk-taking ability, to show the tough leadership and take tough calls?
Rajdeep, I think these studies which we at Lokniti have done have clearly shown the point that the people in India believe that a sincere effort has been made during the pandemic by the government to be able to deal with the situation. People may not have been totally happy with what happened, but then they believed that a sincere effort has been done. And I think Raj Chankappa is right when he says that the way the Prime Minister communicated, the strategy that he used for communicating, bringing one issue after another, is something that did win public confidence. And let me make my third point. If you look at our data, you said close to half said he did a good job. So it's not about an excellent job, it's about a good job. Which means that in the situation that we found ourselves in,
one second. Sandeep Shastri,
good performance by the leadership.
One second. Good is 74 because I'm including good and outstanding.
Good is 44, excellent is 30.
Yeah, good is 40.
Yeah, so he's adding
I'm separating good and outstanding.
Okay, you're right.
Outstanding is 34 and good is 44. I'm separating the two. Outstanding and good, if you separate, good I would say somewhere in the middle. Not a very, very positive or a overwhelming vote, but a reasonably good endorsement. Now, which means that people feel that it could have been better, but what has happened is okay. So I think in that sense, it is an endorsement of what the leadership has done, in spite of whatever reservations that people may have had about certain things possibly having, could have been better.
I again come back to it. It also reveals at one level the lack of options. And that's where Gaurav Ballabh, you may want to respond, because the good, if it's good is middling, Good is often in comparison. Outstanding is when I feel strongly
No, but
about
that's
someone.
one way of looking at Rajdeep. One second. Anyone who says good typically doesn't vote against the government. So good is like a vote.
Being a middling.
No,
How can good be middling?
No, I'll tell you why.
No, 1 minute. Let me just make my point.
Let me answer.
I mean, you have 4 parameters. You have a poor, average, good, and outstanding.
Yes.
Obviously, if you're taking it at to be 25% each, if I just take it as a statistical exercise, then poor would be at a 25%, average would be at a 50%, and 75 would be good, and outstanding would be above 75.
In politics,
if you take 1 minute. If you take good to be middling, so are you saying there are 3 parameters which are below 50%?
No. One second. I want to contest. Rajdeep, I want to contest what. I want to contest what Sandeep Shastri is saying. In political science and in sampling. No, one second. In political science and in surveying, a good response, and both Sanjay Kumar and Rahul Verma can come in, is generally thought of as an affirmation vote for the government. Nobody typically who says good votes against the government. So if you got 74% saying good.
Sir, but you're not going to get 74%.
No, sure.
So my point is, those people who are looking at good are also comparing it with how the opposition is dealing with it. And if the opposition is seen to be negative. No, because, sir, in a democracy, it is possible. I'm raising the question.
It is possible, but you can't say.
So I'm asking, let me ask Gaurav Ballabh that. Gaurav Ballabh, you are running away from the question. When it comes to leadership, it is boiling down to that. We saw it in 2019 as well. Elections increasingly are seen as presidential. When I vote for the NDA, I also vote for my leader, who I want as Prime Minister. I ask you this question. In the last 2 years, you've not settled that issue at all. And therefore, it comes back to Modi versus who?
So, Rajdeep ji, a few data scientists on your show had mentioned that 12,000 is the sample size. 12,000.
No, you answer my question now, sir.
Lok Sabha. I will let me say. 12,000 means 22 per Lok Sabha constituency. If I assume.
Sir, please answer my question. Sir, let's not debate this. No, you answer my question.
I will answer.
We have limited time, sir.
Give me 10 seconds, then I will come to your point. 10 seconds. So 22 per Lok Sabha seat is an appropriate sample size. I have my own doubts. Okay. Second point, Rajdeep ji, you had mentioned a term, Moditva. Rajdeep ji, when there was an election in Jharkhand or Maharashtra or Delhi or Bihar, was there any local leader campaigning or only one person campaigning? Tell me the answer. Experts are there. Rahul ji, who were campaigning in Jharkhand? You were there.
Gaurav Ballabh, this is a mood of the nation. The opposition has not thrown up a national alternative. I will ask you this again. Please answer my question directly.
So, Rajdeep, the problem is that every day we are coming with an agenda. Every time our leaders are raising the point. See, who had raised the farm bills issue? It was Rahul Gandhi. Only thing is that there was a few select people who will come out and debate on this. Other people are going to ignore what happened to the WhatsApp chat, the Arnav Gate issue. Everybody is aware of that. I don't want to divert our discussion there. That tum mujhe TRP do, main tumhe wo do.
Sir, I am asking you a question.
What is happening in our country?
So I have asked you a question. It is 2 years since your Lok Sabha defeat. Our poll is showing the NDA is holding firm, the opposition is not rising. One of the reasons clearly is the Prime Minister's popularity remains high. One other possible, I am offering a hypothesis, is that there is no option. Nobody is offering an alternative.
No, but he's not going to accept it. He'll again give you some other thing which has nothing to do with your question.
Rajdeep, in all states also the same hypothesis, the same questions I had faced. But the results were something else.
Okay, hold your horses. Let's now come to the Modi government's achievements. One second. We have a lot of data to cover. One second.
I would like to say something on
just a minute, sir.
If you were a professor if you were a student in Professor Vallabh's class, the question is something else, the answer is something else. If he was the one who was the invigilator, he'd be very infuriated with the students' tactics. But we'll park that on the side. We'll come to the big achievements and the failures of the government. Let's take the government's achievements at the top.
All had no cattle.
Okay.
This is the problem. All had no cattle.
Okay.
This is precisely the answer to your question.
Okay,
let everyone have equal time now, sir.
Let's come to the Modi government's big achievements.
Yes, but
the Ram Mandir verdict comes in at the top at 27%. Now, which is interesting because actually the Ram Mandir verdict came through an order of the Supreme Court, but voters and respondents in our survey think that's the biggest achievement, and the government did push for it, and in that sense lay an enabling ground. The revocation of Article 370 comes in at number 2 with 20% of the respondents calling this the Modi government's biggest achievement. The handling of the COVID, which could have been a disaster and has been a disaster for many governments the world over, comes in at number 3 as the top achievement of the government. Then there is the Make in India campaign that comes in at 9, and the black money crackdown comes in at 8, which I'm a bit puzzled by because not much black money has come in, but that's what voters seem to believe.
So now flip it to the failures. If you look at the Modi government failures, the top failure is seen at the moment, not surprisingly, as unemployment. 29% are saying unemployment is the top failure of the Modi government. So the big achievement, Ram Mandir, Article 370, then COVID handling, all achievements. Failures, unemployment comes at the very top. The next is price rise, 13, demonetization, 10, farmer distress for all the agitation that's taking place is only 9% at number 4, and COVID handling, which many people criticize, has come at number 5. So clearly unemployment, joblessness remains the big issue that the government confronts. Ram Mandir verdict and Hindutva, whether it is the ideological agenda. If you look at Ram Mandir plus Article 370 comes to 47%. So clearly Hindutva is getting vindicated at one level, but economy, price rise, unemployment are seen as serious crises. Professor Sanjay Kumar, would I be right in looking at it in that context, that the economy remains the Achilles heel, if there is one in this government, even as Hindutva gets strong endorsement?
Absolutely right, Rajdeep. You are looking at the data correctly. If you look at the question on what has been the biggest failure of the government, it comes to unemployment, and I did mention that that was the mood even before 2019 election, and I would repeat that. But that disenchantment or disappointment of the government is not getting translated into people voting for parties other than BJP. And the reason which we have been discussing for the last half an hour is the crisis of leadership among the opposition parties. And if we look at the other issue of what are the achievements, yes, if you put at the two figures, if you add the two figures of Article 370 and Ram Mandir, both figures add up to roughly little below 50%. But the common people who are saying that this is the achievement of the government, they are not looking at primarily from the lens of Hindutva. They are looking at, you know, the issue of faith, and these are the necessities for the people of people of India. So I don't think that, even though we are trying to interpret it as a big Hindutva agenda, but people who have shown intention for voting for the BJP and they are supporting that these are the achievements, they are not, all of them are not looking at from the Hindutva prism.
Rahul Verma, if there is one red flag for the government, could it be unemployment? Where almost 3 out of 10 respondents are telling us that unemployment, they believe, is the biggest issue facing the government. We saw that in Bihar. Is that a underlying current pan-India?
Sure. First, 12,000 is a good number for national projection. I was not at all mentioning for seat level projection. See, Professor Vallabh, whenever politicians keep making this point on national television that this number is not good enough to make national projection, it basically creates illiteracy about how surveys are conducted. You can say this is a bad survey, you can say this survey is biased, but number is good enough to make national projection. Second point, economy in in a developing country like India is always an important indicator. It remains an Achilles heel for any government which is in power, be it Congress, be it BJP. And despite, as Professor Sanjay Kumar was mentioning, that despite people knowing that economy is going down, they are still voting for the BJP because the opposition parties have not presented any alternative economic plan, how they want to revive it. So you can keep questioning, you have to also generate faith on your alternative model. Third, and as Raj was I think his point about listening to management lessons, in a moment of crisis. So first you need to understand where are people putting this crisis to. There is a pandemic, everyone knows it, but do people blame Narendra Modi or his government for the crisis? If people see this crisis in nature, they are not going to hold the government accountable. In fact, in moments of crisis, people look for certainty, they look for stability, they look for a leadership who can talk about certain things in uncertain times.
So it's coming back to that question of leadership, which Nalin Kohli, I know you wanted to explain your point of view. Go ahead now. Because when you look at these numbers on Hindutva, Ram Mandir, Article 370, thumbs up, but on unemployment, question marks.
Can I make up one more point, which is about the Hindutva thing?
Yes.
Which is, and this is, in my opinion, it's important to understand, because once you have a dominant party like BJP, which is holding fort, it's expanding social footprint, its ideological moorings will be reflected in country's mood. So you can't wish away Hindutva and say that now it doesn't have any role, because that's the dominant ideology of the party.
That's why I use the word Moditva. When you combine leadership and Hindutva, it comes to Moditva. You want to respond, Nalin Kohli? Moditva, actually, is this a vote for Moditva?
I'm going to combine what I wish to see on the leadership segment as also the subsequent thing, because I think it fits in well. First is, the way I look at the leadership thing, when you say 30% or close to that is outstanding and 44% is good, together the average is very good. It can't be middling, or it can't bring it down in that sense, because you already have an average point and you also have...
You made that point earlier. Go ahead.
Okay. The second thing is, that also comes to the fundamental nature of it. Please compare, what do you compare with? The band to compare with is the preceding 10 years of the kind of leadership the government had. Now, whatever we may say of that leadership, people of India finally opted for change. And when in 14 they opted for that change, a decisive break from that kind of leadership from 4 to 14, they have reiterated that, which means they are voting conclusively for the leader who's coming there, the style of leadership that he brings, and the agenda with which he runs his government. That's why I call it the politics of performance. Now let's come to the...
Is it the politics of performance, or is it as some call it, the politics of illusion? The fact is there is unemployment. The fact is, no, 1 minute. The fact is that there is also this illusion.
But when you make it, but Rajdeep, when you say it's an illusion, you make it seem as if everyone who voted for Narendra Modi is a fool, that he couldn't make up his own mind, that somehow he got made a Charlie of, and he got caught. How does that baffles the imagination?
I've said, I actually...
How can it be an illusion? How can so many people be fooled?
I have a different explanation. I said in my book, Mr. Modi is a cult figure. It's not just this is not normal politics. Normal politics, you will say, as we saw even in the COVID handling, despite all the sufferings people have gone through, they still have faith in Mr. Modi. It's almost a kind of religio-political cult that we have, and I wonder whether Nalin Kohli accepts that there are weaknesses like unemployment, despite that people have faith in Mr. Modi. Explain that to me.
Yes, I will, but you'll have to give me time and a patience here, without breaking that. First, let me come to the point that the politics of illusion is a harsh, even if I may use a mean way of looking at it. Because in a democracy as varied and evolved as India, where voters also make a choice between different parties for simultaneous elections, we've seen that, and so have you.
Sure.
Where the BJP has lost the state and won something else, the national, or won the state and lost the national. So that's an evolved democracy, and we must respect the voter. When we call it the politics of illusion, Rahul made that point, then we are demeaning the voter, which is not correct. The second, in terms of illusion, there is a difference between communication and illusion. Performance with communication is potent, or communication based on performance is potent. But communication without performance is a disaster. That would not apply to, respectfully, us, but certainly to the principal opposition party, which is constantly trying to communicate with nothing to perform in terms of performance. That's why their daily questions don't cut eyes.
Let's
come to the third. I want to finish this.
Yes.
14, you said, you and I have also discussed with your last book. You were kind enough to quote me in that. And the next book. We met in Varanasi in 14. We met in Varanasi in 19. But if you call him a religious sort of cult figure, I would have a different way of looking at it. Narendra Modi is not just an icon. He's probably the most charismatic leader this country has seen in decades. He may end up being the most charismatic leader. I mean, you told me an example, not me. You were the one in the field who said, I went and asked a Dalit boy in the hardcore, what you would say, a Mayawati constituency, about unemployment, etc. and all. Yet he said, I will vote for Modi. That was your point to me.
Yeah, because that voter said he had taught Pakistan a lesson at the time.
Yes, but he has faith in leadership for different reasons.
That's right.
Just as in the media, there's the principle, and which I mean, if you'll permit me to just say that on a given, in a newspaper page, not everyone is with the story, involved in the story. Not everyone is interested in the story. And so that means every page has something for someone who's involved in the story, someone who's interested in the story. Like that, voters have different reasons to vote. I think the success of Narendra Modi lies in the fact it's not just about communication. It's about communicating the achievements.
Okay, that's,
which is
that's
and all of it.
Okay, but
And now let me come to unemployment. Unemployment, lest you say I'm running away from it. On unemployment, yes, of course, it would be a concern. But then, can we also understand that this mood of the nation is at a time when there is the pandemic and when there is a contraction of the economy? Of course, this is that period, and it must reflect so, because that is not incorrect.
You know, that's
exactly. Is there a revival and hope? That's the hope of leadership, that there will be a revival.
That's the point, sir.
And my last point on the Congress.
Yes.
Whether they like a 12,000 sample or they don't like a 12,000 sample, this kind of sample has also applied when the mood of the nation gave the thumbs up to the Congress party.
No, but when
I just want to ask Gaurav Vallabh this, because, you know, it's coming down, Rahul, to the fact that maybe the Congress has got its strategy wrong. If you banged on day after day on joblessness and the economy, instead of going in different directions on a daily basis on Twitter, and in a way actually went into the field, maybe the Congress or the opposition would have a better chance.
You are saying maybe they have their strategy wrong? Okay.
No,
maybe they have their strategy
I'm just wondering whether they have a clear strategy where every mood of the nation in the last 3 years, Gaurav Vallabh has shown economy and joblessness possibly as the weakness. And yet I don't see a sustained strategy.
Okay.
What's your alternative?
Please.
Where's your shadow cabinet?
No, cabinet needs a leader. Who's the leader?
Just now, please, Rahul bhai, thoda sa samay de dijiye. Why you are answering on our behalf?
No, we are not.
So Rajdeep ji, you had raised a point, and Nalin ji had raised a point on achievements. Why achievements are not reflected in numbers? My basic question. I started with one basic question in your show today, that can you give me any one governance parameter where the situation of the country vis-a-vis the other countries of the world, or vis-a-vis our last year, the performance is going? I'm asking a simple question. He was not able to answer this in last 50 minutes. Second question on unemployment. He is saying that the entire world is in pandemic. Nalinji, before pandemic, we were in the 45 years worst unemployment numbers. The government had shared that.
Yes.
Are you not aware the unemployment rate, which was 2% in 2012?
What is your strategy? Where is your alternative? Where is your alternative? You provide an alternative economic agenda and stay with it for 365 days and go on the field.
100%.
Why don't you go on the field?
Rajdeep, I agree with you on this. We are developing that particular agenda. We gave an agenda of Nyay. We gave an agenda of direct benefit transfer, which is used across the world in this pandemic.
May I have a quick comment?
Okay. No, we must go across to the other guests also.
Okay.
Thank you, but just one comment.
No, just, okay.
Nyay is not used. My question is very simple. Why Nyay is not used?
Why is he asking questions? He should be answering the questions that Rajdeep and I are asking.
Okay, Gaurav Vallabh, Nalin. No, just a minute, sir. Just a minute, Nalin. Just a minute. You had the cover of your Mood of the Nation is Hindutva reigns. Right. Are you suggesting that the core of the reasons why Mr. Modi or the NDA continues to attract such high numbers is a certain Hindutva affirmation above all else? Forget all the other issues, whether it's China, economy, COVID. It is at the end of the day a sense of a large number of people believing Hindutva as they see it, not just religious nationalism, but a faith in a leader.
Yeah, I think that's a very good question to ask, because if you take a look not just at the two figures that we flashed, which is the Supreme Court Ayodhya verdict and also repealing Article 370, if you go across the poll, we've asked about the Uniform Civil Code. There's a huge endorsement. We've asked about the Citizenship Amendment Act. There's a huge endorsement towards it. We've asked about,
because these are potentially divisive issues. Even on love, so-called love jihad.
I was coming to that.
Sort of giving it a thumbs up. But these are seen as divisive issues.
Correct. Now, therefore, the lesson is this. That is what I think the BJP has to ponder about, is its ability to retain the kind of support of the people on these kind of issues. Well, it's politically very good, but we can see that the people are crying for economic relief. And I think the government has to decide at this point, because it began its second term with actually implementing the entire Hindutva agenda with, such alacrity that we saw, that it has to now decide whether it will focus on development and growth, or will you continue to do divisiveness and polarization, which might get you votes, but the economy will begin to crash.
But we are saying emotive, divisive issues are getting you endorsement. Why should I worry too much about the
No. I would also clarify that while, that's why I'm saying the BJP has to ponder about, clearly Mr. Modi's leadership is a plus. The way he's held this country, the way he's run it and everything. But at the end of the day, people, if they don't get jobs, they don't get income, the voter is very, very clear.
No, but there
is the danger, I think, for
Rahul Verma, that the opposition is making a big mistake by not latching on to the issue of unemployment, by making that the singular focus of their attack. Where from the morning till the evening, if you hammer home and amplify the aspect of unemployment, you've got the government on a weak spot. Rather than that, by diffusing their attack on Rafale, on national security, on Pakistan, on China, are they spreading themselves too thin instead of having a concentrated attack on the issue which voters believe is hurting the government the most?
Before Rahul comes in, let me tell the other Rahul here, you know what the opposition will say? They'll say that focus on the economy. That the media focuses on these so-called emotional divisive. I'm just telling you what their argument is.
In Bihar, Tejasvi Yadav almost made the issue of unemployment the issue that felled the Nitish Kumar government. One second. Final words. Let's go across to Rahul Verma for a quick response.
See, I think you cannot blame the opposition for focusing on many issues. Political parties represent diverse sections and diverse ideas, and that's why they are going to pick every other issue which they think is important. Even if, and I'm saying this with very sincerity, we are living in a very different type of political competition. Thinking that you can just latch on to economy and unemployment and defeat BJP and Narendra Modi, I think we are living in a denial of what is happening on the ground.
No, sure, but that's that's the astute organization of the BJP, which the opposition can't match. But the question is, a mood of the nation is emotional poll.
Without constructing an alternative ideological vision of India, where people see you as a distinct platform. And second, of course, if the economy keeps going down, people facing hardship, they are going to throw this government out. But the opposition needs to show that they can govern. They have a couple of states where they are in power. Can they implement alternative economic vision and show that they are governing better than the states which is governed by BJP?
Sandeep Shastri, final word. Are we in the Modi era? Both you and Sanjay Kumar, 30 seconds each. Is this effectively, let's accept it, we are in an era of almost one party, one individual rule.
Now, Rajdeep, as the poll clearly shows, the three issues on which the people have a positive endorsement of the government clearly indicates why the leadership, 3 out of 4 people support the leadership. On where the people are unhappy, people are aware of where things are not happening. And when the opposition tries to hammer on that point, the people believe that where is the alternative they are offering. So it's not that the people do not know that enough is not happening on the economy. But I think the opposition, even though it makes that point, it does not convince the voter that they have a better solution than what the government is doing.
So it's
and that's where I think the government is getting away. It's a credibility.
It's a credibility crisis that the opposition faces, Sanjay Kumar. Isn't that at the end of the day, this poll would suggest that if the numbers have remained virtually the same in mood of the nation over 2 years, despite all that is, all the challenges that have been faced, clearly shows the country still stands with Mr. Modi because they see him as more credible than the other side.
Absolutely, we are living in the Modi era. If you look at how BJP has performed electorally over last few years, 6 years, and how popularity of Prime Minister Modi has kept increasing, and also look at what the opposition is promising to the voters of this country, I have no hesitation in saying yes, this is the Modi era, and also no hesitation in saying it is likely to continue for a few more years at least.
Okay, we'll leave it over there just for the day. We have two more parts of this India Today Mood of the Nation. So much to think about, so much to ponder. Good, bad, ugly, what's going wrong, what's going right, and where we are going from here, and most importantly, what may happen if elections are held at this moment.
Thanks for watching. It's been interesting as ever. Remember, it's the pollsters who have given these findings. Let's learn to respect the poll findings.
So you're saying don't troll me?
Don't troll me. Please don't troll me. Don't blame Rahul and me. You can blame Raj Chengappa and the India Today magazine team, but at the end of the day, one has learned to see a good poll as an indicator of what's happening around us. Perhaps better than the gyan that we give in the studio. Thanks very much for joining us.
See you tomorrow evening at 8 p.m. Bye-bye.